out there.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The temperature is high in Dallas, and so is the anticipation of the Republican National Convention. While the weather is steamy, controversy at the convention is not expected to be so hot. A unified party will be gathering together tomorrow. Stan Turner is anchoring our coverage from Dallas and joins us now live via News Star 5. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Karen. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dallas. Steamy, hot, you bet it is. We'll tell you more about that in just a minute. But the 33rd Republican National Nominating Convention is just about set to begin. It'll officially open tomorrow morning about 10 o'clock. The gavel will go down, and the 32-member Minnesota delegation's pretty much in place. They're all settled in and ready to do business tomorrow morning. The last of them arriving today here in Dallas. They will be headquartering at the Summit Hotel that's located in the North Dallas suburb of Farmers Branch. Now, the delegates are not really waiting until tomorrow to get the fun started. Tonight they were treated to some good old-fashioned Texas hospitality, Dallas style. The delegates were guests in a private home of an exclusive area of North Dallas. The hosts were actually away in California, but the delegates were having too much fun to even notice. A few former Minnesotans and parents of children now living in Minnesota welcomed the delegates there, and this was just one of the first of many parties planned this week by and for the Republicans. And now that they are here, the delegates, as we say, are enjoying the parties and all the fun-making here, but they came here because of their issues and their points of view, what they want to express here. Our government specialist, Lindsay Strand, joins me now from outside. Is that ever outside the convention? It's still hot here. We'll tell you more about that. She's going to tell us about who these delegates are and what they stand for. Lindsay?
Well, Stan, in many ways, these delegates really do make up a very diverse group. The delegation ranges in age from 23 to 75. The members have wide-ranging interests outside of politics. The delegates include farmers, ministers, and small business owners. There are several delegates who are homeowners. One person is currently unemployed. But the diversity ends when it comes to the issues here. We surveyed the delegates prior to the convention. 28 of the 32 responded and revealed a delegation with essentially one political viewpoint and few dividing differences.
Conservative grassroots delegation to Dallas.
Ronald Reagan couldn't have done a better job for himself if he had personally picked the Minnesota delegates. This is a group of socially and fiscally conservative Republicans with strikingly similar views on just about everything. 83% of those responding to the Eyewitness News survey describe themselves as conservatives and say they want the party platform to embrace conservative philosophies. Nearly all share the opinion that women should be treated as equals, but this delegation is unified in its opposition to the proposed Equal Rights Amendment as it was originally worded. None of the delegates support a woman's unrestricted right to choose whether to have an abortion. 52% approve of abortion only in cases of rape, incest, or threat to a mother's life. 48% would ban abortion under all circumstances. Despite the unanimity on social issues, the delegates say it is the pocketbook and spending issues that are important to them. Most cite the federal budget deficit as the nation's pressing domestic problem. 45% believe it should be balanced only through cuts in social programs. None of the delegates responding to the survey favor raising taxes. President Reagan gets high marks for his foreign policy from this group. 68% say it is excellent. And 2 out of 3 of the delegates say the world has become more secure over the last 4 years. If there is a surprise in the views of the Republican delegates, it is that 2 out of 3 also say they support a mutual, verifiable nuclear weapons freeze. And there may be a surprise in the composition of the delegation itself. These are not party newcomers for the most part, but seasoned party members. 81% saying they have been active in independent Republican politics for more than a decade.
The amount of time that these delegates say that they have been active in the party contradicts the notion that there are so many party newcomers to the party here. But in fact, what many people say has happened is that there are a lot of people who were new at the caucuses, at the state conventions, who elected the regulars who are here. And many of the same things happened with the alternate delegates, too. They seem to have much the same opinion.
Okay.
And I wonder how many people out there are wondering about that song, The Night the Lights Went Out in Dallas.
They just did. Little wing and a prayer here. We'll continue going. Thank you, Lindsay. There are other Minnesotans here in Dallas besides the Minnesota delegation. These are members of a group called ACORN. Now, ACORN is an organization that represents and lobbies for the concerns of low and moderate income people. Our reporter, Kevyn Berger, now reports that Minnesotans joined with hundreds in literally taking their protests out to the streets of Dallas.
The voices of about 50 Minnesotans added to the rallying cry this morning, the Minnesota ACORN group joining hundreds of other ACORN members at a campsite set up on the Trinity River. They're in Dallas to say they've suffered under Reagan administration policies, and they're here to try to do something about it.
We've got to do it. We don't have any choice. We've got to do it. The future of America depends on us. And you know, Ronald Reagan's future depends on us.
This morning, the hundreds of residents of this tent city boarded buses. Their mission, to go into low and moderate income neighborhoods and register voters. Voters sympathetic to their campaign against Ronald Reagan.
Your streets are Oak Meadows, Misty Glen, Sunny Glen, and Holly Glen.
Ethel Hall and Doris Thread are here from Minneapolis to walk the hot and unfamiliar streets of Dallas, enlisting new voters in their cause.
We're from the voter registration. We're here to register you for voting if you're not already registered.
ACORN's goal is to reach and register 20,000 new Dallas voters today, with ACORN members fanned out across the city, meeting people and signing them up.
So you fill this out where you got your citizenship. Yeah, right.
The two women have their own reasons for taking on this job, but at the base of it is a near passionate belief that people must exercise their right to vote.
I came from the South and I couldn't vote. I never voted until I came to Minnesota. And I have been in it ever since because I know you need to.
They're also learning from the other activists they are meeting in Dallas, and they say they'll return to Minnesota with renewed vigor and strengthened organizing skills.
I'm learning quite a bit, and the knowledge, I'll never forget it. We have to come together regardless to whether I'm black, Greek or Jewish or Vietnamese or what. We have to come together, and this is a good way to start.
Tomorrow, as the convention opens, the group will march to the convention hall pushing wheelbarrows. Those wheelbarrows will be full of cards, each card representing a newly registered voter. ACORN leaders say the action is designed to warn Republicans that low-income voters are too big of a force to be ignored. Kevyn Berger, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Dallas.
Thank you very much, Kevyn. Two final notes for you quickly from Dallas. Singer Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, they were in town to entertain yesterday. Brian Wilson arrested in the convention center this afternoon for criminal trespassing. He and two companions were arrested. And the temperature in Dallas today reached a record 108 degrees, but we're so happy to tell you that the temperature now, Karen, has cooled off to a mighty fine 98 degrees. And I want to tell you something. Anybody in a coat and a tie has to be crazy.
Take that jacket off and get cool.
I'm going to.
All right. Thank you, Stan, for that live report. Vice President George Bush arrived.
The coronation of Ronald Reagan officially began today in Dallas, Texas.
Our colleague Stan Turner anchoring our coverage of the Republican convention as he did with the Democrats. He's standing by live via News Star 5 outside of the convention center. Stan, it's not exactly the same view, is it?
Not really, Cindy. It has something to do with the matter of degree. I wish I had a camel and a burnoose right now. But welcome to Dallas. The temperature has been hovering, I'd rather say broiling, around the 100-degree mark most of this afternoon. And in fact, it's over that right now, and I hope you'll excuse my rather casual attire because I think a suit coat and a tie probably doesn't make it right now. But the Republican National Convention, it is officially underway here in Dallas, and we can tell you that things got underway at promptly 10 o'clock this morning. And even though Minnesota has one of the smaller delegations to this convention, it was not difficult at all to tell the Minnesotans during the opening session crowd this morning who else would be wearing a loon patch on their jackets. That was just part of the uniform Minnesotans put on for opening ceremonies, which included navy blazers, khaki skirts and pants, and of course cowboy hats. The delegates to the 1980 convention also were decked out about the same fashion. They said they found their surroundings today, surroundings complete with armrests on all their chairs, very comfortable, certainly a lot more comfortable than on the outside, I can assure you. This city of Dallas really is quite a place. It's big, of course, it's very friendly, and brother, it's hot. I can tell you, this city on the Texas frontier, though, is much, much more than that. We spent this past weekend kind of exploring this town for our Focus at 5 feature to find out what Dallas is all about. Television has a way of forming images for the masses. The current image of Dallas is beamed into homes every Friday as a city of excitement and newness, a city where the Old West collides with the power of new money. It's a city that is still developing its own identity, deciding what it wants to be when it grows up. And Dallas is looking to the Republican National Convention for cues. Looking at Dallas today, it's the 7th largest city in the U.S. with the 3rd fastest growing rate among major cities. It's gone from a frontier town to a sprawling city of nearly 1 million people. 29% of the population has been in Dallas less than 5 years. Growth has been so rapid here that the construction crane could easily be adopted as the municipal bird. If you turn your back on Dallas long enough, a new skyscraper or office building is bound to emerge. Most Americans view Dallas as an oil town. Not really. It ranks 3rd behind New York and Chicago for corporate headquarters, and Forbes magazine lists Dallas as the 3rd leading high-tech center in the country. The Dallas Market Center near downtown is the world's largest single-site merchandising mart, attracting 500,000 buyers a year. David Fox chairs the city's welcoming committee to the convention. He's hoping Dallas's week in the spotlight will enhance the perception many people have for the city.
We want them to see it as a city of opportunity. It's an open city, a city people can be involved in, a city where people make a difference, a city where people can make an impact on their city. It's a growing market. It's a good place to live. It's a good place to raise a family. It's a good place to have their business. I think if they take a total look at Dallas, they're going to be very pleased with it.
But this Sunbelt giant hasn't showered all its residents with riches. Some neighborhoods that sit in the shadow of the gleaming new downtown bear striking resemblance to the ghettos of the older cities of the Northeast. Dallas is also a city where poverty thrives. More than 50,000 housing units are classified as substandard because they fall short of minimum city health and safety codes. For years, when people thought of Dallas, they envisioned a sprawling, hot Texas city. But all that changed on November 22nd, 1963, because of what happened here. This is Dealey Plaza, where President John F. Kennedy was assassinated as his motorcade traveled through Dallas. The grassy knoll and school book depository remain as grim reminders. The citizens of Dallas raised the money to build this abstract monument to honor the fallen leader. These structures consistently remind the crowds of the curious that this is where a modern tragedy happened.
It's a historical event. It happened in Dallas. We always have visitors that come down to the plaza and take pictures. We understand that. I don't know if there was any. If there was a stigma, then I don't see it anymore.
But now, city leaders see this Republican National Convention as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to update its image with the vision of a new Dallas, a chance to show the nation up close what this Texas town is really all about. An estimated 30,000 people will descend on the Dallas Convention Center this week. More than 5,000 delegates and alternates, 10 to 15,000 guests, and the media will be out in force, although not as heavy as during the Democratic Convention last month. This first ever national political convention in Dallas will have an immediate economic impact in the $25 to $30 million range. The city has contributed nearly $4 million to help produce the convention, but that money has all been privately raised. The finishing touches in this huge convention hall were made this past weekend, and hundreds of youthful volunteers from across the country were given some final instructions in what role they can play to make sure this convention runs smoothly. It's obvious that the Republicans will not be making a great deal of news here because there's no question who the nominee will be. Convention planners have been very careful to cater their prime-time gathering to network television.
I think you'll see a very tight, well-controlled, well-managed type of forum here that the delegates will enjoy and the viewers out there will appreciate.
Blazer has also made a point of giving this convention hall a more intimate look than in past years. Soft earth tone colors dominate the podium area, and the speaker's platform has been lowered to make it more a part of the audience and closer to the floor. The convention hall is only one part of this orchestrated effort to make the delegates and guests feel welcome. The nearby Market Center has been turned into a haven for memorabilia buffs. You can buy just about anything remotely associated with the Republicans, or with an elephant for that matter. And Saturday night, the best of Dallas turned out for a huge glitzy bash at the Apparel Mart. Dallas is also doing its best to create a Western flavor for the visitors. The smell of barbecue and chili clashed with the steamy Dallas temperatures for the Barbecue National Invitation Tournament and Chili Cook-Off. And these Texas Longhorns are rounded up and driven through town every day to delight convention visitors. We're back live here in Dallas now. Live, I talked about steamy temperatures there. At last report, it's 101 degrees here. The temperature in Dallas in August averages about 95 degrees. Yesterday, rah-rah, we struck a record here of 108 degrees. The highest ever recorded, though, in August was 113 back in 1980. But folks, Dennis and Cindy, I can tell you, once it's over 100, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
You will have something to tell your grandchildren, Stan. Look at it that way.
Plenty. I'll see you at 6.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Stan.
Turning now from the judicial process to the political process, several events today in Dallas where the Republicans kicked off their national convention. Stan Turner is anchoring our coverage of the convention, joining us now live via News Star 5. Stan?
Barely alive, Cindy. It's hot here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dallas, steamy downtown Dallas, where the temperature has been hovering in the low 100s this afternoon, 101 at last report. But right over here inside this air-conditioned Dallas Convention Center, the Republican convention is officially underway. The opening session this morning lasted only about 2 hours, but in that short time, the Minnesota delegation was able to leave its mark of distinction. As our government specialist, Lindsay Strand, reports here, the group is distinguishing itself in more ways than one.
The Minnesota delegation arrived at the opening session in uniform, hoping to claim the reputation as the best-dressed delegation in Texas. Cowboy hats, navy blazers with loon patches, and khaki pants or skirts. There was time for a prayer and a few speeches, but the morning session was brief. Quite frankly, there's not much work to be done at this convention. Some aptly described this week as one giant party with President Reagan as the guest of honor. Minnesota's delegates say they have a lot to celebrate. The renomination of President Reagan, the Conservative Party platform, which will be adopted tomorrow, and the success of the conservative wing that now has a lock here on the party machinery.
We have been present, and we've been fighting in the conventions for resolutions, leadership positions that reflected our views so that it would follow through, and I think now we have it.
Party chairwoman Marge Grunis is one of the independent Republicans staying at home this week. She was denied a delegate slot and worries about the direction of the party.
We aren't going to win elections if we shut the door and say only this kind of an adjective, Republican, is welcome in this state, because it's not going to work.
Senator Dave Durenberger, who describes the delegation as far to the right of where he is, made his own decision not to come to Dallas.
If one side or the other dominates and tries to keep everybody else out, then you never get to the middle, which is where the public, in effect, that doesn't identify always with a Republican or always with a Democrat, really wants you to be.
Because the conservatives were put down for so long, they're feeling their oats a little bit, and so they got a little grabby. But I think you're going to find that moderating.
The growing strength of conservative Republicans is happening across the country, but apparently in no state has it happened as fast or divided the state party as deeply. In fact, Minnesota is being singled out by national reporters and politicians as the example of what many believe will become the national trend. At the Republican National Convention in Dallas, I'm Lindsay Strand reporting.
Well, this week, party leaders who are sensitive to the basically uniformly conservative viewpoint being expressed here are taking some measures to try to counter that back home. Toward that end, legislative candidates back in the various states are inviting Republicans to sit in and watch with them Mr. Reagan's address this coming Thursday night. Well, there are a number of groups here in Dallas who are here to protest the president's policies. They've been living in a makeshift tent city just outside of downtown Dallas. But this morning, almost 1,000 of them marched the mile and a half to the convention hall. About 50 Minnesotans are included in that group. The group is protesting everything from Reagan economic policies to defense spending to the administration's policies in Central America. A chain-link fence erected by the city of Dallas kept most of the convention alternates and delegates from even seeing or hearing the protest group. Kevyn Berger has been following this protest story in Dallas, and she's with us live now from the convention floor to give us some reaction to the protest going on here. Kevyn?
Well, Stan, as I'm sure you know, more and more Republicans are saying that they are the party that that can try to appeal to low and moderate income voters. With me right now is 2nd District Republican Congressman Vin Weber. Do you see the party making any gains with low and moderate income voters? And what do you say to those people who say the Republican Party is not sensitive to the needs of the poor?
Well, that's just another example, in my judgment, of how the Democrats are locked hopelessly in the politics of 50 years ago. 50 years ago, they divided the country into the haves and have-nots. Well, the country's changed a lot in 50 years. Our party's changed a lot, and so has theirs, but the Democrats can't quite break away from that old New Deal politics. The fact is the delegates to the Republican State Convention in Minnesota had a lower average income than the delegates to the Democratic State Convention.
Okay, thank you very much, Congressman Weber, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you more. Back to you now, Stan.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much. Well, tonight, this evening session begins at 8 o'clock, and a number of women in the Reagan administration will be speaking to the delegates here. Among them, UN Ambassador Jeane Kirkpatrick and Cabinet officers Heckler, possibly Dole will be addressing them as well. And the keynote speech coming tonight from Catherine Ortega, the U.S. Treasurer. So, Cindy, that's it from Dallas right now. Back to you in the relatively cool Twin Cities.
It is very cool. We're most glad to be here, Stan.
Okay.
We'll see you at 10 o'clock.
Okay, Cindy.
Coming up next, though, on Eyewitness, Republicans just wrapping up their session tonight in Dallas. My colleague Stan Turner is live via our exclusive News Star 5 satellite for a report on the activities. Stan?
Good evening, Cindy. It's balmy here. It's just what you'd call a real modest, moderate 90 degrees right now. A guy can put a suit coat on. Well, the Republicans gave over their convention this evening anyway to the women. 3 of the 4 major speakers were women tonight. They were Jeane Kirkpatrick, Margaret Heckler, a cabinet secretary, and the lady you just heard, Catherine Ortega, the U.S. Treasurer. She was the keynote speaker tonight. Now, Kirkpatrick brought the odd situation of a Democrat addressing the Republican National Gathering. She's the president's ambassador to the UN, and though she stopped short of announcing a switch over to the Republicans, she did blast the Democrats' foreign policy posture at their national convention.
Democrats treat foreign affairs as an afterthought, as they did. They behave less like a dove or a hawk than like an ostrich, convinced it could shut out the world by hiding its head in the sand.
Well, for her part, Catherine Ortega, you just saw her, the U.S. Treasurer, delivered the keynote address here just moments ago, blasting the Democrats for their trying to discredit the president.
So let the Democrats run their campaign on rhetoric. We Republicans will run ours on the Reagan record of peace, prosperity, and pride in America.
Well, Cindy, there's still some activity going on here right now in the way of a protest going on behind us, but weather was a big story, the big non-political story that did have some political effects on our Minnesota delegation. We'll talk more about these elements a little bit later in the newscast. For now, back to you.
All right, we'll check with you later. Thank you, Stan.
Okay.
Now we turn to news coming from the Twin Cities. Let's go back now to Stan Turner in Dallas, where women's issues are also a news topic in that part of the world. Stan, I got the impression tonight that a lot of the women that we heard from, namely Jeane Kirkpatrick and Catherine Ortega, were there because of their gender. It looked like they wanted to keep women front and center at the Republican National Convention.
I don't think there's any doubt about that, Cindy. We talked to this deputy convention chairman here a couple of days ago. In fact, we heard from him at 5 o'clock today, and I asked him why the Monday night session was so top-heavy with women speakers tonight. Was it coincidental or was it by design? And he didn't deny that it was by design. They certainly do want to put their female membership up front. If you look at the delegation overall, there are quite a high percentage of women here. Earlier tonight, we told you, of course, and showed you, you heard that many of the main speakers here tonight are high-ranking women in the Reagan administration. And our colleague, Lindsay Strand, is standing by now on the convention floor to talk about the gender issue as seen through Republican eyes here. Lindsay?
Good evening and good evening to everybody in Minnesota.
Okay. Well, we're having a bit of technical problems, obviously, as you can tell, getting into Lindsay over there at the convention right now. We can tell you that apart from the politics, there have been a great many political sideshows not directly related to what's going on inside the hall. These are protest groups that have come here from all over the country. About 50 Minnesotans, we can tell you, joined today 1,000 protesters who are marching from something of a self-styled tent city down in the river flats here, not too far from the convention center. They were demonstrating against several policies of the Reagan administration. The protesters are camping out in that tent city. We're told that it's becoming depleted, we think largely not for want of media attention, certainly, but because of the high temperatures. We had a high here of 108 yesterday, about 102 today. The temperatures are, like I say, very modest right now, only 90 degrees, but it has had an effect on the protesters and the delegates, the regulars as well. Many historians, by the way, believe that, well, the cotton gin really is the instrument that revolutionized the southern part of this country. But, you know, after being in Dallas now for about 4 days, I can tell you that the air conditioning unit really is the savior. I think that's what truly has revolutionized the South, at least right now in these hot, hot temperatures. Dallas is suffering through, enduring, if you will, record-setting heat right now. And tonight, Kevyn Berger is going to tell us how the Minnesotans are coping, bearing up under this tremendous heat.
It's not political controversy that's heating up visitors to Dallas. The heat is generated by the relentless Texas sun. Even in the evening, the temperature hangs in the 3 digits. The mercury at Tent City rose as high as 115. It's here that protesters are camping during the convention, 50 Minnesotans among them. Today, the group marched more than a mile to demonstrate outside the convention hall. The Minnesotans carried ice and cool drinks along with their protest posters and were glad to see a fountain along the parade route. It was a Democrat who first said, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. But this week in Dallas, Republicans appear to be modifying that old saw. For them, the expression goes, if you can't stand the heat, get into the convention. The convention hall is cool, sometimes almost too cool. Minnesotans are ready for the break.
It's heaven. It's beautiful, nice and cool.
Do you almost wish these sessions would go for 24 hours?
Yep. After 108 yesterday, you better believe it.
Where's the pool? Where's the pool? Just getting in and out of the convention hall is enough to make a person break into a sweat.
Well, I think it's a moral equivalent to 30 below weather in Minnesota. The only advantage to that is you can dress for that, and you cannot possibly dress for this stuff.
You can only take off so much.
That's right. That's right. You got it.
The pool at the hotel where the delegation is staying is fast becoming the most popular caucusing spot for the Minnesotans. Some who thought they would spend their free time sightseeing are changing their plans and touring the water instead. Kevyn Berger, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Dallas.
All right, thank you, Kevyn. Once again, we're going to see if we can penetrate this tremendous heat here in Dallas tonight and get on over to the convention floor where Lindsay Strand is standing by. We were talking about the so-called gender issue as seen through Republican eyes. And Lindsay, if you can hear me now, try to tell us at this point just what is the Republican viewpoint on that issue?
Well, Stan, this is really one of those issues that illustrates the split that is taking place within the Independent Republican Party in Minnesota over which direction the party should be heading. There are lines clearly drawn between those who believe that on this issue the party is heading in the right direction and others who believe that indeed the party is regressing. And it is in large part the dividing line between who is here at the convention and who is not.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And overwhelmingly, they are going to say yes.
When Vice President George Bush asked that question this morning before the Republican Federation of Women, a handful of Minnesota delegates were listening. Dottie Rita was not among them. The former head of the GOP Feminist Caucus feels disenfranchised and has dropped out of almost all party activities.
I think my party has taken a turn and left me behind. I believe the party of Lincoln should support the Equal Rights Amendment. The party that says get government off my back should definitely not put the government in my bedroom.
Rito's views are not shared by the Minnesota delegates to this convention, half of whom are women. For the most part, they are firmly behind the party platform, which does not support the ERA, but does favor appointing only judges who are pro-life. Meet 3 members of the delegation in particular, including the oldest and the youngest. All give the party and the president high marks when it comes to policies regarding women.
I've never found it to be other than equal to give somebody a job just because of a quota system, like the Democrats, within the party. They have a lot of very non-qualified people, and I think one perfect example is this Ferraro.
Lila Crow says President Reagan's record in appointing women to top government posts has been an inspiration to her.
And me personally, I'm going to get an office one of these days. Even if it's a county, district, that's my goal as I'm climbing up.
And among the delegates, one interesting point is that many of them that surveyed before the convention began said they did not even believe that the gender gap existed, and those who said they thought it did exist said that they did not believe that it was hurting the party for the most part here. One other thing, these Republicans are making the most out of what is happening with Geraldine Ferraro. Just tonight we are seeing signs on many of the delegates saying honest money and honest disclosures. The disclosures do refer directly to Ferraro. They were distributed tonight by the Conservative Opportunity Society, which is an organization that has been founded by Minnesota Congressman Vin Weber. Back to you, Stan.
All right, thank you very much, Lindsay. That's it for Dallas Right Now. We can tell you that tomorrow, among other things, the delegates will formally ratify the platform. We'll hear from former President Gerald Ford, and we'll have all the highlights for you at 5, 6, and 10. Cindy, back to you.
Okay, we will be checking you. In a moment, we're going to be checking in with Dennis Falcon about Mondale underlined Ferraro's comments that this is probably the most complete disclosure that any candidate has ever made. Dennis?
Republicans, of course, have been rubbing their hands in glee over the Ferraro tax returns fiasco.
Yeah, a couple of prominent Republicans have even suggested that Mondale is considering dropping Ferraro from the ticket.
Well, any Republican worth his salt or her salt, of course, is in Dallas right now. So is our Stan Turner, who has been asking convention delegates and others about the Ferraro matter. Stan, do the Republicans really see the Ferraro tax return fiasco as being a great advantage to the Reagan-Bush ticket?
Well, Dennis, good afternoon, by the way, Dennis and Cindy and everyone back there. This Minnesota delegation is, as you know, conservative and together on basically all the important issues here. But on this Ferraro matter, there's a surprising disparity in variety of viewpoints there. I sampled some of the delegation after their meetings this morning. And what they said ranged all the way from undisguised joy and glee and hand-wringing over this cloud that persists over Ferraro, and by implication, of course, Ferraro and Mondale, to one of the delegates saying, it's too bad, I really feel sorry for Ferraro, to another who said, I don't think that personal finances, whether it's a public person or a private person, is anybody's business. So you have the complete gamut of reaction coming from this Minnesota delegation that otherwise is in lockstep on most issues. It was rather surprising to me.
So in other words, do you think that that might be able to be parlayed into a statement that the delegates as a whole are not overwhelmingly rejoicing about this disclosure, as it seems like the public is divided on the issue too?
Yes, exactly. It seems to be a mirror reflection of the non-Republican part of this country as well. This sampling is not scientific, but I did talk with a number of delegates this afternoon, Cindy, and I was surprised. I was expecting almost a uniform glee over this, but you find a lot of sympathy, frankly, among some of these delegates. But I'll tell you another thing. If there is a common thread on this issue running through the Minnesota delegation, it is that they are almost to a man and woman hoping that Ferraro does in fact stay on the ticket, that Mondale doesn't dump her, because they feel now that she does have a cloud over her head, whether or not the public is satisfied with her answers to the questions. This cloud probably will persist, they feel, and it just helps their cause, the Republican cause, all the more come November.
Those in the Minnesota delegation who are wringing their hands with glee, as you said, is it almost as if perhaps this is equal time for the Democrats in light of what happened to Ed Meese and the scrutiny over his finances?
Exactly, and you can take it back even earlier than that. Here's the party that's had a long and difficult time living down the Watergate thing. Now finally the Democrats have, by comparison, a mini scandal or a mini controversy, but they're happy. You even see Mondale Eagleton buttons, you know, the allusion to Eagleton. True, I saw them on some delegates today, this allusion to Missouri Senator Eagleton, who was, dumped by McGovern back in 1972. Well, folks, we can tell you that while the Democrats were making those big headlines both in Washington and elsewhere in Minnesota today, it was not as exciting here at the Republican convention in Dallas. It was a morning of a lot of speeches and almost no work for the Minnesota delegation. Delegates are having the time to go stock up on stickers and buttons, and Democrat Mondale and his running mate are the target of many of those. Today, the delegates put their official seal of approval on the Conservative Party platform, a platform which does not support the ERA or the concept of comparable worth. It is a platform which leaves the door open to a tax increase. Minnesota Congressman Weber helped draft the platform and believes it sets the proper tone.
The message this sends is the Republican Party has an agenda for the 21st century. If you read through the platform, not just the things that have made the most press for the last 4 years, like abortion and the ERA, you find a substantial commitment to programs that will help people become more independent. Expansion of individual retirement accounts, privatization of outer space, privatization of low-income housing. It's a futuristic platform.
Well, right now, the Minnesota delegates are at it again. Not working over here. They are partying again, this time at a great big 5-state Texas-style barbecue. One of the major social events, by the way, of the convention will take place later today. It's this evening. It's a fundraising dinner put on by the National Conservative Political Action Committee. You know that as NCPAC. And it'll be held at the Circle T Ranch, and that happens to be home of the rich man Bunker Hunt. And tickets, folks, are going for a cool, in this hot city, a cool $1,000 a head. Thank you.
How? Do any of the delegates have that much spare change to fork over for a ticket? Any of the Minnesota delegates?
That's one question, Cindy, I haven't had the courage to ask them, and I don't think I will.
Well, tell them I asked. It won't seem so bad. Thanks, Stan. We will see you at 6 o'clock.
Right.
Thank you, Stan.
Still much more administrative business being taken care of at the Republican National Convention today. The party approved its platform. That issue and more are part of our live coverage of the convention tonight. Stan Turner joining us now from Dallas. Good evening again, Stan.
Good evening again, Cindy, and hello, everyone. Welcome to Dallas. This is day number 2 of the Republican National Convention, and at this moment, the delegates are readying themselves now for their evening session. That should get going in a little under 2 hours. By the way, the delegates held their final morning session this morning, so that'll do it for the AM sessions of this convention. The Minnesota delegation, as a matter of fact, the convention as a whole, is composed of many young people and conservative people. And that's quite a change, of course, from the protest years of the 1960s and the 70s when the label radical was attached to so many of this nation's young people. And Kevyn Berger reports here now that that's quite a change, and also that conservatism is a key characteristic of the young Republicans here.
Common wisdom would say that people tend to get more conservative as they get older, that people are often at their most liberal in their youth. But not this year. Among young Americans, there appears to be a huge groundswell of support for conservative causes and Ronald Reagan.
Help re-elect Ronald Reagan.
1,600 college Republicans are in Dallas this week learning how to organize campus campaigns. 35 collegiate Minnesotans are part of the Youth for Reagan group, but support for the Republican administration extends beyond this gathering. Recent polls show the president's highest approval rating comes from young voters.
I would say that I'm a Ronald Reagan conservative.
Jamie Wheeler is a 24-year-old alternate from Austin, Minnesota. 23-year-old Randy Fuller is an alternate from Lindstrom. The two may be young, but do not consider themselves politically naive. They maintain the GOP is the party of optimism and hope, two qualities abundant in young people.
I think young people are really concerned and are watching the economic recovery with great anticipation because of the better job market that this looks toward for the future.
The liberals like Walter Mondale are always promising something for everyone, and I think young people see through that. It's just not possible to promise everything to everybody.
20-year-old Chip Tangen of Eden Prairie has a different view. He's a member of the Republican Mainstream Committee, an organization of moderates that insists the party's shift to the right is narrowing its appeal.
There are so many issues that I think are important to young people that the conservatives are against.
Such as?
Such as ERA, choice issue, pro-choice, environmental issues especially.
It's not yet clear how big a factor the youth vote will be this year. Not clear if young people constitute a big enough force to help the elephant thunder to victory. But many Republican leaders believe this new generation of young conservatives will stand the party in good stead as it looks to the future. Kevyn Berger, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Dallas.
Thank you, Kevyn. Well, at this morning's convention session, the delegates put their stamp of approval on the party platform. That was accomplished, we can tell you, with virtually no controversy, went right on through as expected. Our government specialist, Lindsay Strand, is standing by live now on the convention floor right next door here to tell us about Minnesota opinion on the subject of the platform. Lindsay?
Well, Stan, as you know, the platform had the very strong support of the majority of the Minnesota delegation. This is a conservative delegation. That is a conservative platform. However, with me now is Leon Oysted, who is both the chairman of the Independent Republican Party and also co-chair of this delegation. And Leon, you have indicated to me that you have some concerns about the tone and how that will play back home in Minnesota. Express to me those concerns.
Well, it's not the platform itself, I mean, in terms of the issues that it addresses, because the platform is not significantly different from 1980. In fact, it might be a little bit more moderate. It doesn't talk this time about the elimination of the Department of Energy and the Department of Education.
It's the tone.
But there is a tone to it, particularly with respect to the tax plank. President Reagan asked for some flexibility in the platform in the event that the Revenues were not sufficient to reduce the deficit, and in the event that the spending cuts were not sufficient to reduce the deficit, that it may be necessary to implement some tax reductions or some tax increases.
So that is going to give you then some work to do when you get back home in demonstrating to people that this is not so much a rigidity here that you're seeing.
That's right, and our platform committee said, no, we don't want there to be any opportunity to raise taxes, and therefore we're going to pass a plank that says that you can't.
Leon Oistad, thank you very much. And that is something that they did this morning here at the convention. We will be back at 10 tonight with more news. Stan?
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Well, the delegates to this convention are given a great deal of free time to pretty much explore the city of Dallas and do what they want. And as part of that, they attend a lot of parties, a lot of free parties. And one such function this afternoon at Texas Stadium, home of the Dallas Cowboys. You Vikings fans have heard of that team in suburban Irving. Well, Minnesota was among 6 delegations invited to a Texas-style barbecue sponsored by Northern Natural Gas. The company has operations in each of the 6 states invited. Delegates were wined and dined in the Stadium Club with a good old-fashioned Texas barbecue. Well, tonight, the parade back to business here, the parade of Republican celebrities continues with some big names on the docket tonight. Former President Gerald Ford will address the delegates. And there are 2 Doles, Robert Dole, the Kansas senator, and his wife Elizabeth Dole, the transportation secretary. And that'll button it up for now anyway. Cindy, we'll be back with the highlights at 10 o'clock tonight.
All right, we'll see you then. Thanks,
All
Dan.
right.
Coming up, Now, while at home, Mondale says he's been watching the Republican convention on TV. My colleague Stan Turner has also been keeping his eye on the proceedings. We have him live now via our exclusive News Star 5 satellite for this report. Stan?
Good evening, Cindy, and good evening, everyone from Dallas. We have politics with a beat tonight here. There's a reggae band going in the park over here just yonder, but it's another hot night here in Dallas, and there's been some hot oratory pouring forth from the convention center just behind me here. The Republicans keeping up their partisan attack tonight on the Walter Mondale, Geraldine Ferraro ticket. And, of course, tonight, former President Gerald Ford, among others, was up on the podium to praise President Reagan as a man who leads from strength and to condemn Walter Mondale as one who would lead from weakness.
Vice President Mondale wants this election to be a referendum on the future. I can't blame him for wanting to forget the past, the 4 years of Carter Mondale from 1977 through 1980. Who wants to remember 4 years of roaring inflation, skyrocketing interest rates, and so-called malaise?
Another speaker tonight, New York Congressman Jack Kemp, the author of the Reagan tax cuts back in 1981, a man seen by many as a likely candidate for president in '88.
Our economy is expanding again without inflation. The United States is respected again. Our adversaries are on the defensive, and America is once again a model for other nations. And Ronald Reagan actually seems to be getting younger.
And Cindy, we will be back here in Dallas a bit later in the newscast to give you a look at the man in the Minnesota delegation who's already pushing very hard for a Jack Kemp candidacy in 1988.
All right, Stan, thanks. We'll see you in a little bit then.
Okay.
In our local news, we're going to go back now to that quadrennial extravaganza, the Republican National Convention, of course, where my colleague Stan Turner has been sorting things out with an eyewitness news team. Stan?
Okay, Cindy, here we go again. Well, the Republican delegates are just about getting ready. It'll happen officially tomorrow night to nominate the Reagan-Bush ticket. But already, the Minnesota delegation has become something of the unofficial cheerleader for a rising GOP star in 1988. So let us go over live now to the convention floor here in the arena to our government specialist, Lindsay Strand, with more on that story. Lindsay.
Talking about. They are already zeroing in on just who should be the party's presidential nominee in 1988. And the conservative color of the Minnesota delegation is showing once again. 76% of the delegates responding to our Eyewitness News survey said they would like to see New York Congressman Jack Kemp heading the ticket next time around. Since the convention began, the Kemp in '88 campaign has essentially been operating out of the Minnesota delegation. Bon Clayton of Chanhassen brought 1,500 buttons to Dallas for all the convention delegates. Button business has been brisk.
He appeals to the blue-collar voters, to the broad-range conservative, to the Westerner, and to the Southerner. That's the kind of coalition that Reagan has put together, and I think we have to try hard to continue that.
Minnesota delegates are enthusiastic about the New York congressman who helped to shape President Reagan's tax cut plan and now is carrying the conservative banner for the party.
Jack Kemp is the closest thing we've got to Ronald Reagan, and that's what I'm looking for.
He's a good conservative and he has some good ideas, especially about taxes.
For most people, it sounds early to be signing on with a presidential candidate for 1988, but not for some of Kemp's strongest Minnesota supporters.
Well, I already made up my mind in 1980 that I want a Jack Kemp.
And among the other delegates, they weren't all for Jack Kemp in the Minnesota delegation, at least the ones that talked to us. There were only 3, though, for George Bush, 2 for Minnesota Senator Dave Durenberger, and 1 for Minnesota Congressman Vin Weber. Now, behind me, I'm sure you can hear the music as things draw to a close here for this final event. The big speeches tonight from many of the potential party nominees in 1988 are over, and tomorrow night it will shift back to 1984. President Reagan and Vice President Bush being nominated here on just 1 ballot. Back to you, Stan.
All right, thank you very, very much, Lindsay. Well, this convention is drawing its share of hucksters trying to make a quick buck, and also a number of political groups trying to send a message far and wide across this country. In fact, one of the hottest selling items right now is this $4 poster. It's reminiscent of those old movie posters, but this one stars Walter Mondale and other top Democrats. It's titled The Return of Walter Mondale. A group called Students for America is selling this one. They say they're selling as many as 1,000 a day at the convention, but not all of the and the shirts and all the rest of it are really coming from the convention area proper. There's a hot business in selling these items a couple of miles away from here. And today our Kevyn Berger followed one Minnesota group as they went over there to see what they could find amidst all those oddities.
The businesses of Dallas are literally hanging out the welcome signs to visitors, and with good reason. Lots of money is changing hands as convention goers search for souvenirs. The premier memorabilia spot is this GOP gift bazaar at Dallas's Market Hall, and bizarre it is in places. The bazaar is a good 5 miles from the Dallas Convention Hall, but a lot of the people who are visiting Dallas this week are going out of their way to try and stop by. After all, a slight detour is worth it if it enables you to see an 8-foot pink elephant. There are more elephants here than you could shake a trunk at. In addition to the official Republican animal, you've got your stuff emblazoned with pictures of Ronald Reagan, and of course your basic Texas trash and trinkets, y'all.
$1 buttons right here.
And let's not leave out the buttons. Some members of the Minnesota delegation got caught up in the fever of trading old favorites for ones with updated slogans.
Show me what you have.
I don't know if I want. How about a Walter Mondale? Just another shopping center.
You got a $3 value on it.
All right, I'm going to trade that one.
When the Minnesotans head back north, they will bring their new treasures home to remember this week by.
I'm going to go home and maybe make a big frame of my poster, the official poster. Put some of the buttons along with it.
It's the kind of thing that adds fun and a highlight to a convention, and it's the fun part of it.
And from 2 for $5, Man Alive, $3 each, or $20, you can preserve history for the future. Buy them often, buy them early, buy them many times, and when you're through, send your friends over too.
It may be true that some of the salesmen are going a little overboard hawking their wares. Judging from some of the sales pitches we heard, not all the bull is bottled up. Kevyn Berger, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Dallas.
Thank you, Kevyn. Well, that'll do it right now. That's our Dallas story for tonight. Tomorrow, the convention meets in day number 3. They will meet not in morning session for a change tomorrow, only in evening session. And at that time, they will, of course, call the roll to officially nominate Ronald Reagan and George Bush, Cindy, for 4 more years. That's it from steamy Dallas.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow night then, Stan. We'll return, though, in a moment with more news. Stay tuned. Dallas is definitely the right place for President Reagan to be.
The president arrived at the site of the Republican convention today, the day before his nomination becomes official. Stan Turner is in Dallas and now joins us live via News Star 5. Good afternoon, Stan.
Good afternoon, Dennis. Hello, Cindy, and hello, everyone. Well, we are, in fact, coming down the home stretch of this Republican National Nominating Convention. We can tell you that, of course, tonight will be the pro forma, the official nomination speeches given for both the president and the vice president. That'll happen about starting at 9 o'clock. President Reagan arrived here in Dallas from Washington aboard Air Force One this afternoon under an extremely tight security net. He was taken to the plush Anatole Hotel. That's about 3 miles from the convention center. The president will not be visiting the convention hall tonight, but he will watch the boat on television and prepare for his acceptance speech tomorrow night. First Lady Nancy Reagan will address the convention this evening, however. By the way, it was lucky for the president that he was not here at the convention hall at noon this afternoon. There was a 20-minute power outage. A circuit breaker blew. If you've been in there, you know the air conditioning is so extreme, it's not surprising they lost power for a time. Only those in the hall really were security people and media people, and at least they gave the media folks some stories to track down. In 1980, Minnesota happened to be one of only 6 states which Mr. Reagan and Mr. Bush did not carry. But Minnesota IR leaders say that problem could be remedied in 1984 with just a little help. Kevyn Berger tells us more about that.
All this week, the Minnesota delegation has announced that the state is Reagan country. Now they're lobbying for the president to come see for himself. Delegates are convinced a presidential visit can swing the state into the Republican win column when the votes are added up.
Right now, when you look at our poll in Minnesota and we're running neck and neck, I think just having the president there could tip the balance and we could take our state.
Teams of top Republican stars are visiting each state's caucuses. Those that visited with Minnesotans today assured the delegation that Walter Mondale's home state has not been written off. But when the question and answer session opened up, the first question was, will Ronald Reagan visit Minnesota between now and November?
They said, tell the people that are putting the Reagan campaign together that he must make a swing through Minnesota. So is that commitment, can we count on that?
The speakers were only able to pass on what top Republican officials had told them to tell the Minnesota delegation.
When we came to Minnesota, the one thing they said is tell them that this campaign is going to be in Minnesota, is going to fight for Minnesota, and with your help is going to win Minnesota.
But this is politics, and there may be some political arm twisting involved in getting the White House resident to Minnesota. IR leaders say they're ready to call in some favors.
I think there'll be some of us doing that. I think some of us are owed a few.
In the end, the Minnesota delegation got no firm commitment that the president will make a campaign stop in our state, but the delegation did get the promise that the national re-election team will get the word that Minnesota Republicans want that visit very badly. Kevyn Berger, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Dallas.
Well, the Vice President, George Bush, was not planning this to happen, but it happened. He took his turn as a stand-up comedian. It happened here at the convention during a news conference, and this is how it happened. Take a look.
American people in jobs. Yes, ma'am. Right here's lady. Do you have a question? No, she. Yes, right here. Second row, next to the guy in the blue shirt, holding her left hand up. It's a he. Sorry about that. You got to be careful. I'm very sorry. Go ahead. Excuse me. I'm very sorry. Go ahead. 1,000 apologies. Go ahead.
That was a reporter, a male reporter. It happened that he had flowing long locks, and from a distance, from Mr. Bush's perspective, it looked very much like a woman. It was a male reporter. Well then, in other convention news, this has by and large been a peaceful convention, not only in the hall but around the downtown Dallas area. There were several arrests, however, of demonstrators in the downtown area today, even though it was largely peaceful. The Dallas police aren't saying how many were arrested, possibly 70, but they had the problem, whatever it was, cleared away rather quickly. The evening session tonight begins at 7:30. They're allowing more time for the roll call of the states, but mostly for the nominating speeches tonight. The Pledge of Allegiance will be given by actor Charlton Heston. The national anthem will be sung by Wayne Newton. And delegates will also hear tonight from Texas Senator John Tower and Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater, in addition to the First Lady Nancy Reagan, who will be addressing the delegates tonight. So Cindy and Dennis, that'll do it from Dallas for right now. It's a little bit cooler. The sun's behind some clouds, thank goodness, and we'll bring you the highlights of these major activities going on over here tonight at 10 o'clock.
I got to ask you, Stan, did you see the reporter, the male reporter that supposedly looked like a head? Did you see him? Would you have mistaken him?
Yes, I would have. I did not see him.
And your instincts are pretty good in that department. So
really, from only a few feet away, the gentleman looked very much like a lady.
Who did he work for?
He worked for one of these counterculture press groups. He's been living in the tent city with the poor people. Mm-hmm. It's a protest group. So, but eventually he got his question off, and he said he was satisfied. He said the vice president answered it. That's all that mattered to him.
Kind of wonder how Geraldine Ferraro would have handled the situation under the circumstances. Thank you, Stan. We'll see you at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Stan.
Now, when we return, Turning to politics now for this Wednesday, it may be pro forma, but it is still a big night for the Republicans as they vote to endorse their presidential ticket. Stan Turner, as he has been doing all week long, anchoring our coverage of the convention. He joins us now from Dallas, live via News Star 5. Stan?
Good evening, Cindy. Good evening, everyone. Well, let us begin here with a fantastic understatement. That is that all indications point to a smooth first ballot nomination tonight here at the Convention Hall for President Reagan and Vice President Bush. The roll call of the states will start about 9 o'clock Twin Cities time tonight. The president arrived here in Dallas about 3 hours ago, but he will not be going over here to the Convention Center tonight. Instead, he'll be watching the proceedings on television. He will deliver his acceptance speech tomorrow night before the delegates. Earlier today, there were some heavy hitters appearing over here from the Reagan administration. Not only here, but members of the Congress visited the Minnesota delegation. Their purpose was to give the delegates a pep talk and get them excited about the fall campaign for President Reagan. Delegates pushed the speakers for a commitment to get the president to come to Minnesota this fall. No promises were made, but California Senator Pete Wilson did suggest that Minnesota strike a deal with California to assure victory for the president.
We'll make you this deal, and admittedly, it's better for us than for you, but it's really better for you too. We are willing in California to sacrifice Ronald Reagan by having him in Washington for 4 more years. Your part of the deal is to take Fritz back.
After that caucus meeting over at the Summit Hotel where the Minnesotans are staying, the Minnesota delegates pretty much took things easy today, all this in anticipation of tonight's nomination of the President and Vice President Bush. You know, delegates from other delegations are somewhat surprised when they come upon our Minnesota delegates here when they find that the Minnesotans are called independent Republicans. As a matter of fact, there is a move afoot now to change all that within Minnesota, and we'll go live now inside the Convention Hall, and we want to hear more about this from our government specialist, Lindsay Strand. Lindsay?
Well, Stan, you've heard the expression, what's in a name? And when it comes to Minnesota Republican politics, the answer may be too much. The IR party chairman is one of many delegates here who believes that it may be time to drop the word independent from party and get straight back to GOP politics. At first glance, the Minnesota delegation looks like any other at the convention. In fact, the delegates wearing their cowboy hats look like all the rest of the Republicans in Dallas. But these delegates are more independent, at least when it comes to names. Minnesota is the only state in the nation with an official party name of something other than Republican. But the distinction may not last long. Both co-chairs of this delegation would like to see the name changed back to simply Republican.
If it was an adjective, yes, we are independent Republicans. But it isn't an adjective, and therefore it sounds as if it's an independent and a Republican party, and it's not. It is a Republican party.
I don't think there's any reason to continue that, and a lot of people would like to see us become the Republicans again.
In 1975, the name was changed to attract more Republicans. There was Watergate to forget, and surveys had shown that the word Republican by itself produced a negative reaction among many Minnesotans. But today,
the word independent has a very negative connotation. I don't feel independent about my efforts. I feel that I'm a part of a team.
Others think it's just clumsy.
Because it's too much work for people to say IRs.
Cumbersome or not, the idea of an independent Republican Party is not one that has caught on anywhere else.
That is new in me. I've heard of independence, but not an independent Republican.
Frankly, I think the Republican Party is good enough for the rest of the country. Why shouldn't it be good enough for us?
Now, if a change like this were to take place, it would occur next summer at the state party convention. Here, things are beginning to get underway just in the last few minutes. As you can hear, the band is getting underway for what the Minnesotans believe will be a big night. Back to you, Stan.
All right, Lindsay, thank you very much. Well, finally tonight from Dallas, this story. The thousands upon thousands of news people looking for a story here this week in Dallas found one this afternoon without trying very hard. It happened right under their noses. Here's what happened. The power went out for about 20 minutes in this huge convention complex when a circuit breaker broke. There were no lights, there were no injuries, but the air conditioning shut down and just about every television crew in the hall began shooting a story, including us. It happened during the noon hours, several hours before any delegates were expected in this hall. Well, that's our story from Dallas for right now. Cindy, of course, tonight we'll be back at 10 o'clock, and we'll give you some of the Minnesota delegation reaction to the expected and no surprises at all nomination tonight of President Reagan and Bush.
You know, actually, I was a little surprised when I heard you say it would be a roll call vote, not done by acclamation.
Well, it will be. Actually, they'll start the roll call. It's our understanding, according to a script, and it is a script, they'll probably go through only 3 states, then they'll call for acclamation. That'll do it.
Okay,
yes.
Well, we will see you then at 10 o'clock.
Okay, Cindy.
Now, coming up next on Eyewitness News at 6, a show of labor.
The two-term presidency. For the first time since President Dwight Eisenhower held the office, the country we love is a country at peace with itself. And that's not all. A century ago, a great thinker in the land captured the essence of a new republic. America, Emerson said, was the country of the future, a country of beginnings, of expectations. It has been that way since an empty continent first beckoned to refugees fleeing from oppression. And over the years, we have drawn our strength from a moral commitment to live together as neighbors. We have become a nation of doers, not doubters, a land of open doors and open minds. It was from America that there burst forth the plain truth that government is accountable to the governed, and we are all responsible to God. On these foundations, we build a society rich in ideals. For this, the Republican Party came into being, protesting slavery and man's inhumanity to man. For this, millions of our youth have shouldered arms and gone off to battle for their faith in one another. Many came home in boxes. Many have not come home at all. Recently, at the request of President Reagan, I led a U.S. delegation to Italy for the 40th anniversary of the liberation of Rome. Following a wreath-laying ceremony at an American cemetery, I looked out across the countless rows of white stars and crosses and was reminded of what might have been had their lives not been snuffed out. It brought back the past, and I remembered that the army I fought in was black and white and brown and yellow. It contained in its ranks the sons of the rich and the poor, Jews and Gentiles. At first, they seemed merely nameless faces, drawn together in defense of our land and its most cherished beliefs. But the battlefield brings out character and sensitivity. You come to know each other in a very special way when you share wartime experiences. You see into men's souls, and you realize that America means nothing if she ceases to believe in the strength and the spark of divinity within each of her citizens. It is that belief that gave the birth to this great republic, and it's that belief that keeps hope alive. Hope is the spirit of America, and hope is what we lacked just 4 short years ago. The poor lacked hope of anything better. Black people lacked hope of economic and social justice, already delayed. The working man and woman lacked hope that their wages would outpace cruel inflation. The senior citizen lacked hope that Social Security would keep its promises to them. The Hispanic, like other ethnic Americans, lacked hope that their adherence to family values would admit them to the family of decision makers. The disabled lacked hope of equal opportunity, and the family farmer lacked hope that his labor would bring a decent standard of living. And all of us wondered, none more than the young, is America still what she had been, a country of the future? The 4 years of Ronald Reagan are answering that